Hey, what's up, everybody? Today I'm going to be talking about my experience with the recent road trip I went with my family to the Redwoods. The drive to the Redwoods wasn't too long, but it was long enough to notice. It was a pretty quiet drive mostly. My brother mostly slept the whole time or was on TikTok. I watched the scenery go by, or sometimes I read. We also talked some and stopped at rest stops, of course. I mean, if you've been on a road trip, you know that rest stops are essential. The drive was beautiful and scenic. We had a tasty stop for lunch at In-N-Out. The first hike that we did was the Stout Grove Trail. This was my first exposure to these gigantic redwoods, and I was blown away. There was also this specific giant redwood where you could take a photo of yourself or of someone else on a wooden platform to compare the contrast between a person's size to a massive redwood. My brother also got on top of a fallen redwood tree, and there were many more fallen redwood trees we saw after that. And it's amazing to see their root structure. Surprisingly enough, they only go 10 feet down in the ground, which I found really surprising. The next hike on our list on Friday was the Grove of Titans. It is a hike where you walk on these metal plates to protect the nature wildlife there. There are some stairs you climb and down on the hike, but it is relatively an easy hike. I think anyone from kids to elderly could probably do this hike. These are where you see some of the biggest redwood trees that you can see in the National Redwood Forest, hence the name Grove of Titans. We also talked with this nice couple that was also taking photos that told us about the roots fact that I told you earlier on. Big redwood trees are actually clones. And a question that rangers debate about, are these big redwood trees one big tree or multiple trees clumped together? One fact in theory of the one big tree idea is that the roots are actually connected underground, so that would make it one big tree. Or at least that's the thinking. What do you guys think? Is it one big tree or multiple trees clumped together? Since technically these big trees are multiple trees when you see them, but they're merged together to become kind of one big redwood tree. We went to this beach overlook, so at first no one was getting out, but later on, after seeing the view, I got my mom to come out of the car and see the view because I thought it was worth it. And my brother joined also. It has this kind of 360 view around where you can see the water down below and you can see the far city in the distance, the lighthouse, and the harbor. The last part of the day of Friday was going to the hotel. We stayed in Klamath, which was a podunk town. The next day we woke up and had breakfast. It was a big breakfast for this eventful day that we're going to take on. The first thing we had on our list for the day was a drive-through tree, which is this big redwood tree with a car-sized hole cut through the middle of it for, you guessed it, cars to drive through and take photos. Our car didn't seem to fit, or if it did, we didn't want to risk trying. Also near the drive-through tree, there were these emus we saw, which I didn't expect to see on this trip. Was not thinking emus. That's where they would be, California. The next place we tried to go to, I say try because it didn't work out. We planned to go to Scenic Drury, if I'm saying that right, Parkway Drive, but the road was closed sadly, so we didn't get to go. I'll have to come back some other time. The next stop was seeing elks at Elk Meadow, and I have to say this was one of my favorite experiences about this trip. You get to see them so close and up to the point that's the closest I personally have ever gotten to see an elk, except for when I went to the Grand Canyon and an elk put his head through our window. But that's a whole nother story. If you keep driving forward past Elk Meadow and you arrive at the point to either go up to Fern Canyon, which costs 12 physical dollars, or to the left, some other smaller hikes such as Trillium Falls, which I highly recommend, is totally worth it. Trillium Falls is such a beautiful hike with lots of different variations of ferns and redwoods and everything that you could think of. It's really what I would say encapsulates the National Redwood Forest, dare I say. It's a beautiful hike, especially when you're hiking it in foggy weather. If you get the chance, you should definitely hike one of the redwood hikes in foggy weather. My pick is Trillium Falls. The Trillium Waterfall is also very pretty and interesting because the waterfall goes smoothly through these two rocks, almost like the water cut through one big boulder. There were also these burned trees that you could go in and look up and see the sky. They look very interesting from the inside and outside, and if you had to, you could make them as a temporary shelter. And then we drove up to the Fern Canyon pay point. We paid our $12 and continued down the road to the Fern Canyon. I have to warn you though, the potholes are so bad and huge on this road, especially the last one we went through, which literally has a creek going through it. We made it through, but then there were police up ahead that stopped us and had us turn around because somebody's airbags went off. probably through the big pothole. Since we already paid the $12, we wanted to enjoy our time there. So we went to Gold Bulls Beach, that is also there, and my brother and I played hangman on the beach and drew cute things for our girlfriends. We also saw a fisherman from the shore catch a fish and walked along the beach finding some really cool rocks after my stepdad showed us the one he found. There was even some fossil-like rocks. Since we still had more time, and the day didn't go according to plan with Fern Canyon and the scenic Drury Parkway Drive, we decided to go to another beach overlook. This one was probably part of the same beach as Friday's overlook, but looked completely different, so it was interesting to us. The water was a pretty bluish green color, and there was a spot where we walked down a hill. It was flat and only had a few big rocks. The area almost felt alien in the way, because the big rocks were just placed randomly around this area, but the rest was just flat. We watched the ocean for a while, waiting for sunset, until everybody got cold and went back up the hill to get into the car. We start driving down the road, and we stop on one of the side outlooks because the sunset finally came, and it was this golden ray sunset. I know you've seen them. They almost remind you of what heaven may look like, or at least are giving you those oh or hallelujah vibes. The last day of my trip, we ended it with a bang. The Mystery of the Trees, a very popular place for a very good reason. They have these amazing wooden carvings that tell the story of Paul Bunyan, the lumberjack. To be honest, I don't care much about the story of Paul Bunyan, but seeing the artistry of the wooden carvings that were really. And the main two things I would say are the Canopy Skywalk Bridge, where you are as high as the trees, and it's magnificent and an amazing time. My mom, even though she is deathly scared of heights, also did it, and we were very proud of her for facing her fears and doing it anyways. The other main attraction, I would say, is the gondola, where you have a high viewpoint, but in my opinion, it's nothing super special. You do get to see trees in a valley somewhat in the distance though, at the top. The other main thing is the weird tree formations they have, like the lightning tree and the 3-in-1 tree, and a few more, but you'll just have to go and find out for yourself. We decided to take the coastal drive home, which added an hour or so to our time, but it was so worth it to see the ocean go by as scenery instead of farmland.